Now we're going to be working with equations involving rational expressions, and we're going to call this segment Part 2. At the end of this segment, I'm going to give you a warning about working with equations or with expressions. So let's now consider an example of an equation which involves rational expressions. For example, 2 over x minus 5 plus 2 over 2x plus 1 equals 22 over. If you'll remember from what work you did earlier, anytime you have denominators in an equation, the first thing to try to do is to find a lowest common denominator. So we'll look for the LCD, and to do that, we need to factor in factored form. It doesn't need to be factored. The same thing with the denominator 2x plus 1. And so we'll in the lowest common denominator. But the denominator 2x squared minus 9x minus 5 needs to be factored. Is that we're going to have a minus sign here, which means the signs in the factors will be plus and minus. It actually turns out that we can have 2x plus 1 and x minus 5 as the factors of 2x squared minus 9x minus 5. Notice the middle term, we're going to have a 1x and a minus 10x, which will give us a minus 9x for the middle term. So it turns out that the lowest common denominator needs to have a 2x plus 1 factor, but we already have one. It needs to have an x minus 5 factor, but we already have. It turns out to be x minus 5 times 2x plus 1. One more thing we need to determine before we go on with the problem is the domain of the problem. Now remember that the domain of the problem in this particular case with rational expressions means that we don't want to have zeros in the denominator. So x minus 5 cannot be equal to 0, and that means that whatever solution we have, x cannot be equal to 5. The same thing with 2x plus 1. 2x equal to a negative 1/2. So we'll need to remember these two numbers at the end of the problem and check our solution to make sure that it's not one of these two numbers. So now we'll to eliminate the denominator. So we'll multiply the left-hand side of the equation by that, and we'll multiply the right-hand side of the equation by that. So we have the right-hand side multiplied also by that lowest common denominator. The equation on the left-hand side had two terms. We'll need to distribute this lowest common denominator and multiply that by each of these two terms. So we'll have x minus 5 times minus 5, and the same thing as for the second term, x minus 5 times 2x plus 1 will need to be multiplied by 2 over 2x plus 1. And we'll take care of the right-hand side of the equation in a few moments. Let's go ahead and simplify the left-hand side of the equation. For the first term, notice that x minus 5 cancels out, and the only thing that we have left over is 2 times 2x plus 1. For the second term, the 2x plus 1 cancels, and the only thing we have left then is 2 times x minus 5. Now, let's consider the right-hand side. We had a 22 over the factors 2x plus 1 times x minus 5, and we needed to multiply that by the lowest common denominator, which is x minus 5 times 2x plus 1. But on the right-hand side, the x minus 5 factor gets eliminated from the numerator. Now have is 2 times 2x plus 1 plus 2 times x minus 5 on the left, and on the right-hand side, that equals 22. So let's continue then working this problem to solve the problem. Let's distribute the 2 on the first term, so we'll have 4x plus 2 plus 2x minus 10 for the second term equals 22. Putting the like terms together, we will have a 6x minus 8 equals 22. Adding a positive 8, I should say, to both sides of the equation, we will have 6x equals 30. Dividing by 6, we have x equals 5. But remember, anytime you have rational expressions, look back. And if you remember is one of the numbers which was not in the domain of the problem. So x equals 5 cannot be a solution to this particular equation because it is not in the domain of the problem. So the only solution possible is x equals 5. It doesn't work because it's not in the domain of the problem. So this equation has. So don't forget to look at that last part. When you have a solution, it's not a legitimate solution. So this problem has no solution at all. Now, I would like to give you a warning about So let's look first of all at a problem involving an expression. Suppose we have the problem over 2x plus 1. This is an expression, it involves rational expressions, and therefore, in order to simplify this problem, we're going to have to get a lowest common denominator. So when we get a lowest common denominator, times 2x plus 1. Now, if you remember, if I need to have a denominator which has an x minus 5 and a 2x plus 1, for this first term I'm going to have to multiply numerator and denominator by 2x plus 1. So it's going to be 2 times 2x plus 1. For the second term, I have a 2x plus 1, but I don't have an x minus 5. So I'll need to multiply the numerator and denominator by x minus 5. Now, we can go ahead and simplify the numerator. For the numerator, we will have 4x plus 2 plus 2x minus 10. In the denominator, 5 over 2x plus 1. Remember that in an expression, the lowest common denominator stays there. So when we collect like terms, we will have 6x minus 8 over the denominator, x minus this expression a little bit more, we could actually go ahead and factor a 2 from the numerator, and we would have 2 times 3x minus 4 over the lowest common denominator, which is x minus 5 times 2x plus 1. But notice, it didn't help because we can't cancel any of the factors of the denominator with the factor 3x minus 4. So we could either leave it as 6x minus 8 over the lowest 3x minus 4 over the lowest common denominator. The important thing to remember is that with expressions, the lowest canceled out. Now, let's consider an equation involving rational expressions, and let's consider an equation, the equation we worked out, plus 2 over 2x plus 1 equals 22 over 2x squared minus 9x minus 5. Now remember that because this is an equation, we will find the lowest common denominator, which is equal to x minus 5 times 2x plus 1, because if you remember in the previous problem, we were able to factor the 2x squared minus 9x minus 5 as x minus 5 to be x minus 5 times 2x plus 1. With equations, we will use the LCD to eliminate all denominators. And when we by the lowest common denominator, on the left-hand side we ended up with 6x minus 8. On the right-hand side we ended up with 22, which means that 6x equals 30 or x equals 5. And remember that this is a potential solution. The problem had no solution because x equals 5 was not in the domain of the problem. So, in order to get the solution, we would eliminate all denominators. We would end up with a number and then look back to see if it's in the domain. In this case, it's not in the domain, so this problem difference of working both kinds of problems. An expression where we find the lowest common denominator, it stays until the end, and maybe at the end it gets canceled out. In this case, it does not. But with an equation, we do find the lowest common denominator, but we use it to eliminate all denominators, and then we solve the problem. So different techniques for working expressions and equations.